Good everyone, and welcome to this video, and today we have a review on the M14 41 47 40. Quite a mouthful for such a crap tank. Now, I say that, and this does feature a high kill game. This features a 9 kill game for anyone that's curious. However, please do not take the gameplay as an example of how the vehicle will perform. As you will notice, and as I will point out, I got extremely lucky, so take it with a heavy grain of salt. And probably salt if you buy this thing and realise how bad it is. So this tank comes in at rank 2, battle rate 2.3, and costs 700 golden eagles. Is it really worth the investment? The short answer, no it fucking isn't. Now why is that? Well, to start off with, it has crap mobility. The mobility is trash, with it being 14.6 tons and only having a 125 horsepower engine, which doesn't even produce all that horsepower most of the time because the engine never really touches 1900 RPM. And as a result, your mobility might as well be equivalent to a heavy tank. And I don't mean a heavy tank like an IS-1, I mean a heavy tank like a mouse, because it certainly feels like that. The top speed is listed as 20.7. You'll be hitting that if you throw it off a cliff or you have a long enough road to accelerate on. And that is the mobility pretty much covered. There's nothing really to mention here. The track, or the actual terrain traverse, really matters on what type of terrain you're on, and even that isn't great on most terrain. So, let's get into everyone's favourite part, the armour. The lower glacis is 30mm thick, which has the transmission behind it, which is... that's okay. This I'll let slide. The machine gun port area is pretty trollish, which does help it, but no one shoots here. And then we have this part, the main armor, which everyone and their mothers will shoot at, is just 30mm thick. The driver's hatch, however, is 50mm thick, which may sound like a lot, but then you look at the effective thickness and realize that pretty much every gun at this BR can punch right through that without even trying. I know I'm going to say that about the Stridsvagen M41, which is going to get its review soon, but at least that thing has mobility, so you don't have to rely on the armor as much. In this, you do. Now, keeping with the tradition of the M14 tanks, it does have a pretty decent turret area, with it having a slight weak spot here, but otherwise the gun mantlet and area is pretty trollish. This is the main selling point, and if you can, try and get this thing hull down. You don't want your hull exposed. The side plate here is also 30mm thick, and if you try to angle your front armour, this will be flat as a witch's tit, so that will not be doing anything for you. The side armour is 25mm thick on all sides, the rear armour is 27, with some parts being 25, and the rear of the tank and turret being 25 as well. The top is just 8mm on the engine deck, and the top of the roof is just 15. And over the driver's area, as well as the bow machine gunner's area, it's 25. Now you may notice if we take a look at a typical M14, if I just move my Sherman here, if we take a look at a normal M14, you might notice something different. The bow machine gun. This bow machine gun is a 13.2mm Breda Mod 31 machine gun. It has equivalent penetration to a slightly worse 50 cal, and whilst it may seem useful on paper, remember that it's hull mounted and not coaxially mounted. As a result, in order to use this weapon, you have to swing the entire tank around, and that doesn't help it, especially with the poor traverse on most terrain, and given the poor engine power and overweight nature of this tank, doesn't help it any further. Going into the extra machine guns that you have a coaxially mounted Breda 8mm machine gun, and you also have a roof-mounted 8mm machine gun. This one doesn't have a lot of ammo though, so just bear that in mind. Your main armament is the 47mm 47-40 38 cannon. This is different from the one on the M1441 because the barrel is slightly longer. However, this gun may be familiar to AB43 players because it's the exact same gun. You get 10 degrees of gun depression, and you also get 20 degrees of gun elevation with a pretty good reload rate, because you'll need it, but a pretty poor traverse rate in terms of turret traverse. And I just cannot warrant this thing for a sale, because remember, this thing is also part of the Italian starter pack, And you know how I reviewed that if you're, well, relatively new to the channel. Because if you've seen that review, you'll know how bad it is. Because this, not only is this tank crap, the plane is also quite crap. And unfortunately, for 700 Golden Eagles, I just cannot suggest this to a new player. And I just cannot suggest them to buy the pack. Because in the tech tree, there is a tank that's actually better. The Solaris Ariano. This is the same price and has, whilst it does have the same gun, which does struggle in up tiers, it at least has mobility and arguably better frontal armor. I'm bringing this up because the penetration on the gun, you may remember that I ridiculed the Chihi 5th Regiment for its penetration. This is even worse. At just 69mm at 10 meters, nice. But then you look at 500 meters at just 59. This is embarrassing, to be brutally honest. And at 10 meters, you're almost being outdone by a German 20mm. That just proves. The 13.2 has 24mm of penetration, which is pretty okay. And it can take out some of the lighter vehicles. But as I mentioned, it's hull mounted, not coaxially. And I'm sorry, but for 700 Golden Eagles, I cannot suggest people to buy this vehicle. And this is a big, fat do not buy. That's all I'm going to say on that regard. But anyway, let's jump into the match and let's take a look at the infamous M14 41 47-40. If you really want a cheap Italian premium tank, just buy the Solaris Ariano. It is so much better, and I don't even own it, and I can tell you that. The mobility really saves it, and it can enable it to get it to positions earlier where it will not struggle. So, getting on the move. As you'll notice, I put in the replay on 4x speed. This is for good reason. There is Shadow, one of my trusted squad mates, in his Solaris Ariano. Notice how much quicker he's going compared to me. And as you can see, the traverse is extremely poor. And what else can I really say? Except the mobility sucks. So now that we've skipped ahead nearly 3 minutes of the match, we can at least go from here and I can point out some of the flaws with the vehicle. So as you saw there, if you look back a couple of seconds, you saw the bogies were sparking and were struggling to get over the terrain. The tank suspension is extremely poor. I just never have had luck with the suspension on this vehicle. So coming in on a Sal 40, that was never going to pen even with something like a German 75, but you get my point. If you're facing lightly armoured vehicles, like a Sal 40, it can do some work. That's kill number 1. But that's the catch. If you have to rely on that in order to succeed, there's already something wrong. So at this point, I'm trying to knock down this tree just in front of me. If anyone's never actually used this spot, it's a really good spot. After destroying the tree, I move up and I spot the Crusader with the bushes. And I'd just like to point out where he penetrated. He went straight for the machine gun port. So even though it's quite trollish, it is not guaranteed to save you. That's kill number 2. For anyone that's curious, he took out the loader. And there I spot a Crusader the Saint. The turret armor actually took that one. And now I'm just trying to pinpoint his position and adjust accordingly. Of course, I can't see him for a tree. And now I have to manually adjust. And down there is the main terror, pun intended, because I called it that in a previous video in the French starter pack review. The B1 Tur. You cannot scratch that thing. If you get lucky, you can get the side of the turret, like I'm trying to go for, or the rear. But even that's not guaranteed. And right there is another tank that you are going to meet a lot and are going to struggle against a lot. An M4A3 105. And notice, I'm having to go for the vehicles that are at low BR than me to try and score kills. Because I simply cannot pen half of the stuff that I'm meeting. I take out the track on the BT5, the Sherman lobs a smoke shell at my way, and I kill the BT5 for kill number 4. But soon we're about to meet one of the most annoying enemies to fight in this tank. If you thought the B1 Tur and the M4A3 was bad, it's about to get a lot worse. Just over to my left is a T-34 1940. And he isn't going to be nice, let's just say that. Your gun pretty much can't scratch him unless you get the turret cheek, or from the side. And he can lol pen you, without even trying. He might struggle with the turret face at range, but he can bounce your gun pretty comfortably at most ranges. Now what I attempted to do here was to go for a driver's viewport shot, but I aimed just a little bit too high, and volumetric eats that shot there. I penned the part of the turret that would have normally killed it, but it didn't because additional armor. But he gives me the flat part of his turret cheek, so I'm able to kill it for kill number 5. Had he been paying attention and actually been able to do more than one thing at once, he would have easily handed me my arse. So continuing on, there's an M4A3 105 and a B1 Tur down there, the M4s from earlier. And I simply cannot scratch either of them really. So at this point I spot a Valentine, which you can kill a Valentine, but you have to be close to do it, unfortunately. And at this moment I spot a blind SU-122 and take him out for kill number 6. And as you saw, most of the stuff that I struggle to penetrate, I'm having to wait for side shots. And speaking of things I'm going to struggle against, there's an SU-122 climbing that ridge to my left. But M4A3 doesn't remember that I'm here, and I'm able to take him out for kill number 7. But again, I have to rely on him making a mistake and not knowing that I'm here in order to kill him. And here comes the SU-122. Yeah, this thing isn't nice. However, that shot you just put on me hit the one spot that will not kill my vehicle. He hits me with a heat round on a machine gun port, which does take out my loader, but it doesn't kill my gunner. So I'm able to stay in the fight. Crusader over there, he's trying to get shots at me, so I aim at him first, because obviously the SU has no gun breach. And there we go. Kill number 8. And this SU is going to be my final kill. Penetration, which doesn't do a whole lot. And I'm trying to get a shot into the right-hand side of the crew compartment, but I just can't penetrate him. And I start to slide down the hill because of the lack of traction. But then he gives me his driver's port. And that is kill number 9. But as you can see, I'm trying to reverse back up the ridge. But my squad mate there is Ostra, if anyone was curious, from the Discord server. And he actually has to give me a tow so I can get up there. I don't stay up there for very long, and this leads to my downfall. He pulls me up, and even with his boost it took a while. And in a moment I'm going to attempt to go back to the C point, or the B point, sorry, to take out that B1 Tur. And even if that was flat at that distance, I'd struggle to penetrate his armor. So I decided to start making my way back down the mountain, and now I can at least go and help my team deal with that beast. However, Joe didn't spot something that would have made a difference. Not only is there the A-13 over there, but there's actually a British armoured car anti-aircraft vehicle. So yeah, this isn't going to end very well. moving up to the B point to try and get some advantage at least. And I spot the A13. I don't know how to spot him at first, but still. And here comes the armoured car. And he just lol pens my side armour. Same with the A13. The A13 goes straight through my front armour and finishes me off. The armoured car took out my engine, and then the A13 hit me in the crew compartment. So that's why it looked like the armoured car killed me, but it was actually the A13. But I'm sorry, but for 700 golden eagles, I cannot suggest this vehicle to anyone. Do not buy this tank, even on 50% off. Just buy the Solaris Ariano. It will do you a lot better. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys off. I hope you enjoyed today's review on the M1441 47-40, and I'll see you all on the next one.